Hello and welcome to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's Recruit, Retain, Reactivate, Harvest Huddle Hour, or R3H3 as we like to call them. My name is Tish Palmadesi, and I'm going to help navigate our discussion today on what's a hot catch in winter, an introduction to ice fishing, bass and sturgeon fishing, and a look at some marine and ocean resources that are available to you in winter and all throughout the year. Before we get into our recording, a little bit of background on our program. R3H3 recordings, or huddles, are a way for the department and the R3 team to connect with Californians all throughout the state and help with their hunting, fishing, foraging, and shooting sport journey. These recordings are meant for beginner audiences or those that have taken a step away from the activity and are looking for tips on how to restart. If at any time during our program you have a question, comment, or concern, or even an idea for an upcoming huddle, you can email us at r3statewideprogram@wildlife.ca.gov. And now, time for our program. We start by heading up to Lake Davis in Plumas County and talk to Pat Patterson, an expert ice fisherman and CDFW partner.
This is an example of the kind of fish you can catch when you're ice fishing. Ice fishing in California, I'm not joking. Hi, my name's Pat. I'm with Pat's Guide Service, and we're out here on Lake Davis in California, and we are doing some ice fishing. I've been ice fishing for about 15 years. I've been guiding for ice fishing for about 7 years. Before you get out on the ice, one of the most important things you can learn is ice safety. Learning how to judge the ice thickness and conditions is critical to safely recreating on the ice, whether it be ice fishing, ice skating. There are numerous ice safety videos on the internet. I highly encourage you to watch some of them. There's a myriad of safety equipment you can purchase to be out on the ice. One of the most important is some flotation. This is a Striker ice fishing suit. It has flotation built into it. So if you do fall through the ice, it'll help you float and then extricate yourself out of the ice. Another very important tool are ice picks. They just go around your neck, pull them apart. They have very sharp spikes. If you're floating in the water because you're wearing your flotation and your arms are on the ice, you can use these ice picks to pull yourself out, to give you something to grip. They're a pretty important safety device. A throw rope to be able to throw to your buddy, or for your buddy to throw to you or somebody else that goes through the ice. Good piece of safety equipment to always have. A spud bar. This one's built into this ice dipper for chipping through the ice close to the shore where the water depth is shallow, so you can safely assess the ice to make sure it's thick enough to support you and go out and have a good time fishing. When you get on the ice, if it's glare ice, having some chains for your boots is very helpful in getting some traction. There's a bunch of different manufacturers of these to give you a little bit of extra grip on the ice. Having some trekking poles is a good idea. They give you a couple extra points of contact, and if you're pulling a sled with all your stuff in it out onto the ice, these help you push your way forward. Great pieces of safety gear. In order to check that ice thickness, you're going to need an auger. And an auger can be either a hand auger. These are relatively inexpensive, pretty easy way to start. Or you can get an electric or gas-powered auger. You'll need these to drill your hole in the ice, to check at the edge, and as you progress out on the ice to make sure you maintain safe ice thickness. And you'll also need them to put your hole in the ice so that you can catch some fish. There are a variety of equipment that you can purchase that will help increase your enjoyment of ice fishing. A fish finder such as this Humminbird Ice 45 is a flasher. There are other companies that make flashers that helps you check the water depth below the ice, and it lets you know whether there are any fish in the area as well. Another tool, especially here in California, if you purchase a second rod stamp, that is very useful is the jigging jaw jacker. The basic gear you need is an ice fishing rod. These can be purchased as a combo. You can get a rod, reel, and line fairly inexpensively at many retailers throughout the state and online. A good bucket is helpful for carrying your gear around. A chair, like this folding camp chair, it's pretty nice, or you can sit on your bucket. Basic tackle, such as small jigs, spoons. You can use bait, worms, power bait, all the things that you would use to catch fish during the summertime also work in the wintertime. Once you have your gear and you're set up, as you may or may not be able to tell, we're inside now. This is an ice hut, collapsible, foldable, and it can provide nice protection from the wind, snow, whatever you got going on outside in the elements. The benefit to these shorter ice fishing rods is when you're sitting in your shack, such as this one, or out on the ice, and you're fishing in your hole, you can keep the tip of your rod close to the hole, and all of the action stays up above the hole. So when you're fighting the fish, you can control it a lot better. Some people do start with traditional length poles, but these ice fishing rod and reels make life a lot easier, especially if you're inside a hut like this one, which we're in today because of the wind, not so much because of the snow or the cold. If it is cold outside, you can grab a heater. These shelters have air ventilation. Getting a carbon monoxide detector inside while you're using a heater, similar to a little buddy heater or one of those catalytic heaters, you can fish in comfort even when you're ice fishing. So how does one go about finding a good place to fish on the ice? Most of the lakes that freeze safely enough to ice fish are at higher elevations all throughout the Sierra Nevada and California. Most tackle shops will be able to tell you, especially in the Sierras, which lakes are prone to freeze and therefore be safe to ice fish. The same lakes freeze pretty much every year all throughout the state. The ones that I fish are lakes such as Frenchman, Davis, Silver Lake down by Kirkwood area, South Lake, Caples Lake, Red Lake. Near my Truckee area, I fish Prosser, Boca. Occasionally, the ice will freeze safe enough to fish on Stampede Reservoir if you can get out there. If you're still feeling intimidated about getting out on the ice, do a little bit of research on the internet. There are a ton of YouTubers out there that give great ideas about different gear selection, species you can target, areas that you can think about trying to go fish. And just because somebody's doing an ice fishing video from Canada doesn't mean some of those tips and techniques can't apply to the same species here in California. Before going out onto your local lake, always check with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife website to check the regulations for that specific lake that you're planning to fish on. Make sure you're staying legal, following the rules.
Pat, thank you so much for all of that great information. And again, people, safety first. If you know the body of water that you're going to go ice fish on, call ahead, make sure that it's safe enough for you to be out there, ask about that freeze depth. And again, do this before you even head out the door or start planning, because again, safety is a priority when you're out on the ice. If you have questions for Pat, you can email him. His email address is patsguideservice@gmail.com. Now, for the remainder of our recording, we're going to hop into our virtual interview room and talk to Don Paganelli and see how we get started in bass fishing. Hey, Don. Don, can you go ahead and give everyone a brief introduction of yourself, a little bit about your story and how you got into bass fishing yourself?
My name is Don Paganelli. I do work for California Department of Fish and Wildlife with the Fishing in the City group. And what that is we put on fishing clinics to teach kids and adults how to fish. And we do that by stocking local ponds here in Sacramento. And it's also a statewide program, not just here in Sacramento. I've been doing that now for about 20 years.
What is maybe say like a list of top 5 things people need to do to get started in bass fishing?
Try to find some local bass fishing clubs, and there's a lot of them. They're very instructional in themselves. If you're just getting into it, that's usually a good way. Talk to your local tackle shops because they're there to make you catch fish because they want you to come back. When you walk into these fishing stores, it's amazing how much stuff is out there just to go bass fishing. There's so many products on the market. So the last thing you want to do is buy everything you see.
Right.
So you want to try to just kind of limit yourself to start and get the basics going.
So, what are some basic parts of our fishing kit, our tackle box that we need specifically for bass fishing?
Well, specific lures this time of year, anything that mimics, if you're fishing a lake like Lake Berryessa has a large shad population. So baits that imitate the shad that are swimming in the lake are really good. So looking for lures that resemble something like that. Also, we call them creature baits, anything that might mimic a crawdad. We get a lot of crawdads that will start coming out of the mud and out of the weeds when that water starts to warm up. So they start to feed a lot on crawdads because crawdads provide a lot of calcium, and the big females love to eat crawdads to get that calcium buildup in their system before the spawn. So anything that mimics that kind of stuff, we call them creature baits.
Where do you even start to look for bodies of water to bass fish in?
Well, again, local tackle shops will give you some good ideas for that. I mean, here in Northern California, we're blessed with some great lakes like Lake Berryessa, Clear Lake for largemouth bass, and then Bullard's Bar for world record spotted bass. And then Southern California has Lake Casitas, Lake Castaic, and a lot of Southern California lakes down there that have a lot of trophy-sized bass in them. And a lot of the reservoirs that have a trout stocking program, those bass tend to grow at a larger and faster rate because they're feeding on the rainbow trout that are being stocked in the lake also. So those are some clues to kind of tell you, hey, that might be a good lake to catch big bass. But some of the lakes, like here in Northern California, Clear Lake is known as a big bass fishing factory, known for quality fish and good sized fish. The California Delta, another great place. And again, this is the time of year we're getting into February, which we call post or pre-spawn, where the bass are just coming out of their winter mode and starting to think about spawning. And that's when the females tend to get a little bigger because they're growing the eggs and everything else. So they tend to start to feed quite a bit. And that'll go into March, April. And I've seen bass spawning all the way into June.
Wow.
So there's quite a curve that goes. They don't all go spawning at the same time. So they just kind of start to stage as they start to move up out of deep water. And this is the time of year where we start going out and looking for that and kind of starting to get clues as to the water temperature. Water temperature is everything too. So 65 is an optimum spawning range. But when that water starts to reach 60, those bass start getting that feel where they know that it's time and their biological clock is telling them time to move up and start feeding and get ready to spawn. This can be the time of year when you can catch your personal best. I mean, both of my big fish have come during the spawn or during that period of time. Not to say that it doesn't happen any other time, but that's usually the best time to capitalize on trying to catch a very big fish. And if you do, please turn them loose because they're great for spawning and having more bass. If you want to catch a record, make sure you have a certified scale in your boat, and you can't weigh the fish in the boat. You have to weigh it on dry land in order to be certified, believe it or not. You can take a measurement of the fish, the length and the girth, and they can make an actual fiberglass reproduction of that fish with just that information. If you take a lot of pictures and get a length and a girth, they can make you a fiberglass replica of that fish, so you can have something to mount on the wall. I have not taken any fish to mount. I've taken a lot of pictures, which for me is about everything I need. I mean, I can brag about the picture, but
Yep. On catch and release, things that people need to know to do that humanely and the correct way.
You just take the hook out as fast as you can, get some quick pictures. If you have a live well on your boat, you can put them in a live well for a while, let them kind of recuperate a little bit. Then you can get some good pictures and let them go. If you don't have a live well, have a camera ready to go so that you don't have them out of the water for very long, and just do a good release on the fish, and everything should be fine. Largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, spotted bass, all the bass are pretty hardy. So they're not as delicate as trout. Rainbow trout a little bit different. So yeah, for bass, it's just, take some good pictures. And I'm not saying you can't take a few home to eat, but if you catch a trophy, which I think, is a big deal, get a lot of good pictures and watch her swim away, because that is pretty satisfying.
Kind of talking about Don here real quick. What's the largest bass you've been able to catch?
Largemouth bass is 12 pounds, came out of the California Delta. My largest spotted bass came out of Bullard's Bar, and that was only a couple of years ago. I was unexpected. It was in April, when I thought the spawn was pretty much over with, but this one was still up there. The world record is from that lake, and it's been broken 2 or 3 times now in that lake in Bullard's Bar, which is here in Northeast California. And then Clear Lake has a lot of big fish. My first double-digit fish came out of Clear Lake. But yeah, and there's some big smallmouth bass, not to misrepresent them, but smallmouth bass are always a lot of fun too. Lake Berryessa has a lot of big smallmouth bass in it, and so does Lake Almanor. Lake Almanor is a cold lake, and those fish start to wake up more like the end of April is a good time to go up there for smallmouth. Great smallmouth fishery, a lot of fun.
So even when you think that the time to catch bass is over, you're saying you never know, or like, how would you gauge that? Just on water temperature, or?
Well, bass fishing is 365 days a year, and most of the time you're following them in their attempt to either spawn, or they've already spawned and they're going into post spawn, where they're just going to start feeding again before it goes into winter. So there's a whole cycle to it. And once you get into bass fishing, you start talking to these guys and you start listening to what's going on, you start developing that cycle. And then we'll go into a fall bite. And the fall bite is when those bass get very anxious to feed before it goes into winter time. So there can be a very big bite right around September, October, just before the winter hits. So there's a lot of cycles to it. So it's not just the spring when they're up to spawn. You can actually get into a really good feeding frenzy in the fall.
That's really good to know. And you're saying the more you get into it, you'll be able to track those cycles and follow those cycles. And the more you're making connections and following people on social, or talking to guides, or even just talking to other anglers, you'll start to learn that more.
Oh, it gets in your blood and you can't get rid of it.
Yeah, you would know, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if people have any questions, can they reach out to you directly? Is there an email address or something where if people want expert Don's opinion on something, or have a question about a certain body of water or bait that they are interested in trying to use, can they email you?
Through my email, which is dpagjb@spcglobal.net, and they can ask me questions anytime they want.
Well, there you go. Everyone's first beginner resource is Don. So you can just email him.
I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody has and show you some baits. We don't have time to go through a lot of that because there's a lot, but anything I can help somebody with that to make them a better bass fisherman, I'm there for you.
Thank you, Don. From that, we're going to move right into sturgeon fishing. Have with us Tom Schroyer joining us. Tom, can you take a few minutes and introduce yourself to everyone, maybe who you are, what you do, and how you got into sturgeon fishing?
Yeah. My name's Tom Schroyer. I've worked for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife for 33 years, working exclusively on anadromous species, which sturgeon are one of those. And so I really took an interest in sturgeon, especially just because they're such a gigantic creature. And a lot of people have never seen one before, and they don't even realize they swim right here. But I've been a fishery biologist, senior fishery biologist, through the end of my career, which was just 2 years ago, and now I'm living the life fishing for them.
Now, Tom, I know that before people even get started on their sturgeon fishing journey, they probably should educate themselves fully on the regulations surrounding the species, because I know not all sturgeon are available to be fished for. We just had that poaching incident coming out of Tracy, California. So what do people need to know before they even start on their journey about the differences in sturgeon that you can and cannot fish for?
That's correct. Here in this area, we have white sturgeon and green sturgeon. And the green sturgeon is the one that you cannot possess at any time. And you must immediately release them when you catch one. And they're a lot fewer in number. I mean, sturgeon in general, there's not a lot of sturgeon out there to speak of as per other fish species, but green sturgeon are very, very rare. And we want to try to take any precautions that we can to try to protect those species.
So, Tom, what you're saying is, like with all species, or whenever we're going to start something new, is you have to educate yourself and prepare before you ever even head out.
If you don't know anything about the fish and how it feeds and where it can be found, you're in trouble right then and there. So the best thing to do is read as much as you possibly can about sturgeon. And those are places like the internet is a great resource. Go to fishing seminars that are put on, kind of like over at Fisherman's Warehouse or at the Sportsman's Expos. There's sturgeon fishing guides that are there, and they can provide a lot of good information. Talk to people that are out there fishing for them. Just go out to fishing places where there's boat launches and ask them if they've been fishing for them. I got a lot of information from your basic fishermen. Talk to your friends, and then I can't say it enough, know those regulations inside and out, because there are quite a few set forth right now just to protect the species.
All right, so we've educated ourselves and done some background on this species. We are studying the regulations and know those before we head out. Now what? Do we magically catch a sturgeon?
It's been said several times now that it takes over 100 hours to catch your first legal sturgeon. I don't know who started that or what, but I've heard it over and over again, and I believe it because I've been there.
How do you even know where to find sturgeon? Like, how do you know which bodies of water that you might, cast a line and they might be there?
The Sacramento River, the Feather River, the California Delta, and all your bays could have sturgeon, but it's all about timing, season, and all of that. When they're going up to spawn, the Sacramento River and the Feather River are your best bets. But there's also sturgeon that are still living out in the bays and delta where they really like to hang out, that are not spawning yet. Sturgeon spawn every 2 to 6 years, and so there's time gaps in there when sturgeon aren't found in the Sacramento River and exclusively found out in your bays and estuaries and ocean. By the way, those fish are well traveled. We have sturgeon that are tagged that have been found up in Oregon, and vice versa. So I wouldn't put a lot of effort in fishing for sturgeon out in the ocean, but your bays and estuaries are a very good place to start if you want to fish year round for sturgeon.
Is there a certain time of year where they are spawning? I know we're doing, so is that now?
Yes, it is. funny you should mention that. So yes, right now, I've seen sturgeon in a river as early as November, clear up above Knight's Landing. But where they're heading is above Calusa and higher up. But as these months come into the springtime, all the way up to the month of April and even May, you have sturgeon that are coming up the Sacramento River and the Feather River to spawn.
Okay.
Everyone thinks that sturgeon want to hang out in deep water, and that's not necessarily true. We've caught sturgeon in as shallow as 3 feet deep in San Pablo Bay.
Wow.
So, when they're feeding up on the mud flats, they have been caught in very, very shallow water. So, I want to, I guess, dispel the myth that they always got to be in deep water, because they're not.
Now,
So,
are they bottom feeders? Is that why people think that they are like deep water?
that is exactly where you will find sturgeon that are actively feeding, is on the bottom. Their mouth is actually on the bottom side of their head, not like the front side of a fish's head. It's on the bottom, and it's actually a suction device that is designed to swim over, the bottom, and they can detect, like a shark, through pits of Lorenzini, electrical charges in the water that animals do when they're doing respiration. And so, like, shrimp and things like that are in a hole in the ground on the bottom, they can swim over and detect them and then suck them out of those holes. But there's no teeth in their mouth. Just make sure everybody knows that. Don't worry about that.
Okay, so just kind of refreshing here. Best time to possibly go out and attempt to catch a sturgeon is during when they're spawning, which is
Well,
anywhere between November and, you said, even May sometimes.
yeah, that would be in the Sacramento, in the river systems, when they're ascending the rivers to spawn. The rest of the time, you would want to spend most of your time down in the Delta or in the bays
Okay.
or in estuaries, because that's where they're going to hang out most of their time.
What do we need now as far as gear? Where do we start with what we need to now attempt to catch this elusive fish?
Okay, so the main tackle that you would need is a pretty heavy pole, or a heavy backbone pole with a light tip on it to detect the bites. You don't want to go with a trout fishing pole for sturgeon, because you'll end up they'll break that pole. They've also been known to break line pretty easily. So you want to have pretty heavy fishing line. Your braided fishing lines, like 65-pound test braid, would probably be just adequate for most of your fishing now. 50-pound test mono probably would get the job done. But there's been stories, you hear them all the time, of people fishing off the bank that can't travel after the fish because they're not in a boat, and the fish takes off and takes all the line out of the reel. And you hear those stories all the time where, well, I hooked something out there that I have no idea what it was, but it was big. Well, that was a sturgeon.
Okay.
So you want to have heavy gear, so to speak. And we've provided a photo here of some of that gear. It starts with your main line, and then the sliding sinker or slido setup that goes over the top of it, tied to a heavy swivel snap that it's got to be at least 100-pound test. And you can buy those in any sporting goods shop.
And looking at the photo, were you describing things from left to right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
The hook itself, some people will go as light as 5/0, but that is a 7/0 Kale hook. And Kale is one of the better sturgeon hooks that seems to have a better holding power. Since in the regulations, all these hooks have to be barbless now.
Right.
You got to have a unique looking hook that can hold, and that Kale hook is one of the best. But people use octopus hooks and other kind sickle hooks as well. But the Kale hook that is in that photograph is the number one.
What type of bait would you use? What's a good starting point there?
So the number one bait in the lower Sacramento River Delta and this area here is salmon roe.
Okay.
That is number one. And then lamprey eel, and then ghost shrimp, which is primarily used down lower in the system, but they do use it up here. And then a very nasty creature called a pile worm, which is it gets about a foot long and about as big around as your pinky, but they bite you, and you got to wrestle with that critter before you get bit and get him on the line or on the hook.
And I know you have had lots of success fishing for sturgeon. You unfortunately don't like to take many photos, so we don't have your biggest, but what is the largest sturgeon that you've been able to catch? Your
My
best.
personal best is 8 foot 10 inches long and
Wow.
somewhere over 350 pounds.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness.
They're, yeah, I mean, we got it up to the boat and took a quick measurement of it and released it. But I have had friends who have caught sturgeon to 9 foot long and 406 pounds.
Wow. Can people reach out to you if they have any more questions specifically and, just maybe even want to ask you a few more questions? Do you have an email address that people could possibly email you some questions to?
I love to talk to people about fishing. I used to work on Angler Survey, and I've talked to thousands of anglers on the water. So that I really like to see people, be able to catch these fish and not spend all that kind of time out there and money, in hopes to catch one. And if you can give them the proper information, maybe they can get out there and get the job done a little sooner.
Yeah.
So yes, I can be reached at T. Schroyer, spelled Schroyer. That's all run together. And the number 61 at gmail.com.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Have a good day.
Okay, you too.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Now we're going to move into some great resources that are available for those of you looking to help navigate ocean and marine fishing. For that, we're going to turn to CDFW's own Travis Buck and John Ugeritz. Travis, John, welcome to the conversation. And before we really dive into explaining all of this to everyone, can you guys give a brief introduction on who you are and what you do for CDFW?
Yeah, thanks, Tish. I'll start. My name's John Ugeritz, and I'm the Marine Region's Pelagic Fisheries and Ecosystem Program Manager. That means that I really work on management of the large pelagic fisheries, things like sardine and anchovy and mackerel, as well as tunas and sharks and swordfish. So the big things, often more commercial, but some recreational fishing going on there, and a lot of use of those species as bait for important recreational fisheries. In my program, I also oversee all of the Marine Region outreach staff, and that's where Travis comes in.
Hi, my name is Travis Buck. I'm a senior environmental scientist supervisor for the department. I work in John's Pelagic Fisheries and Ecosystem program, and I supervise our highly migratory ecosystem and outreach project.
Diving right in. I know this, but a lot of people in the public might not know this, but a great resource for navigating ocean marine fisheries lives right in the palm of our hand on our website. And you guys have done a lot of work, just recently, but ongoing, to make that even more interactive and more user-friendly. So let's just dive right in.
Great, thanks. I'll kick it off with our Marine Region homepage. So this is within the department's larger website. But if you click on the Marine Region, you'll get to our page. And we have 4 key areas that we think the public is really interested in: ocean regulations, marine protected areas, information about all our marine species, and then the details on the data and management and research activities that the Marine Region undertakes on a day-to-day basis. And I think maybe the first and obviously most important thing for many anglers is, what are the regulations and how do we find those? And there's 2 really important links here on our webpage: the recreational regulations, and then also our ocean sport fishing interactive map. And I'm going to click on that first to show you where it takes you. This is a really great tool. And as long as you've got an internet connection, it'll actually load up your position if you're using a smartphone or other device with location information available. You just click OK to disclaimer. And if I click here on my location, if I was on a cell phone or tablet, it would actually zoom right to where I was. But I can also use this as a planning tool. And let's say I want to go fishing somewhere on the Central Coast. And I find out that I'm near Point Arguello and Point Conception, and I see this big red area here. That's one of our marine protected areas, and I can click on it and actually get the regulations and the coordinates for that area. If I was using my smartphone, it would show my position in relation to this area to know if I'm inside or outside. And then also, more generally, our sport fishing regulations map shows all of the regulations for wherever you are. So if I'm in the southern management area, I can learn about the regulations for that area with just another click. It'll take me right to the regulations for where I am, and our stoplight screen showing what's open and what's closed in the area where I'm fishing. It's a really handy tool. You can have it in the palm of your hand when you're fishing, as long as you've got that cell connection. And I'd point out that most people are going to say, well, what if I'm at sea and I don't have a cell connection? We're working on that right now. We should have an app within the next year or so that's going to have this sort of information anywhere in the state at any time, whether you've got cell service or not. Going back to our homepage, we can jump right into marine protected areas. And this is another key one where people really want to know the details about California's marine protected areas. Those are special places in the ocean that have higher levels of protection than just the usual fishing regulations. All sorts of information here on our marine protected areas page. You can click on the map to go to your area and find a list of the marine protected areas in that part of the coast, and click on any of the areas in the list to find out what its regulations are, what its boundaries are, pull up individual maps of those areas, and all sorts of other good stuff to find. Again, this is another one where we're in our continuous improvement area and getting better with our marine protected areas website. We're going to have some new improvements out in the next 6 months that'll make it even easier for you to find individual marine protected areas using that tool.
Well, thanks, John. And Travis, you have a few more resources to go over with us, right?
John showed you the Ocean Sport Fishing Interactive Web Map. Right above that, you can also click on recreational regulations, and that will take you to this other feature that we have, which is the California Ocean Sport Fishing Regulations Map. And here you can click on the area of the state where you reside or where you plan on going saltwater fishing. So for example, let's say I wanted to go fishing off the coast of San Luis Obispo. Let's see, I would hover right here and I would click on that. It's referred to as the Central Management Area. And that opens up this page that will show you all of the species that are either partially open, which is signified by the yellow color, green, which means they are fully open, or red, which means the fishing season is closed. Another great feature from the Marine Region homepage is the Marine Species Portal. And this is a new feature of our website as of 2020. And it features information on a wide variety of saltwater species found off California, many of which are targeted by sport fisheries as well as commercial fisheries. And just scrolling down through the Marine Species Portal, you can see that each species is featured with a illustration, and you can click on the species. For example, let's click on the cabezon fish, and you'll be taken to a species at a glance page where you can find information on the species such as scientific name, range, So where this particular species of fish lives and can be found, habitat for the fish, size, lifespan, information on reproduction, information on prey and predators, as well as the fishery for the species. And there's a wide variety of information relating to fishing, including the areas where you can fish for these, the fishing season, the gear used to catch this species, the markets, current stock status, as well as information on management. In any case, the Marine Species Portal is a great place to go if you want to learn more about a lot of the saltwater species that are common off the coast of California. And again, it's accessible from the Marine Region homepage. You can reach the Marine Species Portal by following this icon here, which has the title Species Portal underneath it. I should also point out that you can also search for species with using these other categories. So let's say we only want to look for invertebrates. We click on invertebrate, and that filters for all of the invertebrate species that are found in the Marine Species Portal. You can also search by group. So let's say that we only want to see rockfish. You can click on rockfish, and that will pull up all of the rockfish species in the Marine Species Portal.
That's so great.
So yeah, very, very user-friendly, very, very intuitive as far as how to use this feature. Another great tool for recreational people who are interested in recreational fishing is our fish and shellfish identification page. And you can reach that page again from the Marine Region homepage. If you look at the right-hand side of the page, there's a box with various links for fishing information. And you scroll down and you'll see fish identification right here. So let's go to the fish identification page, which is a great place to find resources for fish and shellfish identification. We have links to the Marine Species Portal, which I just showed you. We have a link to the California Finfish and Shellfish Identification Book, Guide to the Coastal Marine Fishes of California, Common Rockfish and Associated Species of the North Pacific, Rockfish Identification Tips, How Old Are the Fish I Am Catching, Underwater Species Identification. These are videos that were provided by our partners, Reef Check, and show what these fish look like underwater. That's a great resource for divers, people who like to go spearfishing or simply just go diving to observe fish. This page does have new resources added to it as they arise. The White Shark Flyer was just created earlier this year in 2022, as were the two Rockfish ID flyers. All three of those have the red new next to them.
Right. So it'd be good for people to maybe even bookmark this landing page and then just keep coming back to it, because you never know what might be new or what new information you guys are putting out.
Definitely, definitely. That's a great point. And this is a great page to bookmark, and you can return whenever you need to hone your skills at identifying fish, or if you have a fish that you took a photo of and you're trying to figure out what it was, this is a great page to come to and search through the identification resources. Also accessible from the Marine Region homepage is our data management and research page. So let's go ahead and visit that page. So the Marine Data Management and Research page is where we link to various information for data that the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Marine Region collects, as well as some of the management that we're involved with. and also research and technology that we're involved with. So these are some of the focus areas that the department is actively involved with doing research on and managing species under these categories.
Yeah, I feel like it's the more people we could let know about all of these resources, the better, because I mean, if you're media or if you're studying a project or something for a school or a thesis or something, like there's so much information that is literally just right in front of you if you know where to find it or how to get it.
Yes, that's correct. And again, this is all accessible from the Marine Region homepage. Also in the fishing information box, we have a link to in-season fishing regulation and season changes. You should always refer to the fishing regulations, the most up-to-date ones before you go out on your fishing trip. Make sure you know the rules before you go. So I just clicked on that link and we were taken to the in-season ocean fishing regulation changes. And here you can find a wealth of information on any new regulations that might have taken effect since the ocean sport fishing regulation booklet came out. All right, thank you. And as always, if you have a question, you can find that you can email the department's Marine Region at this link below. So if I click on that, I am taken to this contact form where I can put in my email, I can put in my name, what county I reside in, and then I can put the subject of my message here and the actual message in the text box. Click submit, and the Marine Region will receive your questions or comments.
I was just going to say, like, what is the turnaround time if someone is, planning a trip in a week out or so? Is that enough time to give you guys to ask any questions that they might have, or more?
Yes, generally a week in advance would provide department staff enough time to find your message and generate a response and send back to you.
Okay, perfect. All right, that concludes our What's a Hot Catch in Winter Huddle. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email us at r3statewide@wildlife.ca.gov, and a member of our R3 team will get right back to you. And if you have any ideas or suggestions for future topics, feel free to send those our way as well. We love hearing from you. Thanks, and from our R3 team and all of CDFW, tight lines and straight shooting. We'll see you next time.